For a few seconds during the Paris show, Jimin stopped dancing. Not because the music stopped, not because something went wrong, he just stood there, completely still, while the stage lights kept moving around him. And somehow that stillness hit harder than anything he'd done all night. A few songs later, Suga did something almost like the opposite. He barely moved at all, and the whole stadium leaned in anyway. Two members, same stage, same night. Two completely different ways of controlling 80,000 people. That contrast is what this video is actually about. If you're the kind of army who rewatches a fan cam 3 times just to catch a hand gesture nobody else noticed, you're in the right place. This channel isn't here to repeat what every other fan page already posted. We slow down, zoom in, and actually talk about why something felt the way it did. Everything you're about to hear is our own reading of what we saw, not something we're claiming came from a magazine or a news outlet. Just two people who've watched a lot of BTS stage footage, trying to put words to something that's usually left unspoken. And stick around till the end, because the comparison we're about to walk you through might genuinely change how you watch their stage performances from now on. Let's get into it. BTS played the Stade de France on July 17th and 18th, their first time back in Paris in 7 years. Close to 160,000 fans made the trip across both nights. Macron was there, reportedly enjoying himself with an army bomb in hand. The energy was, by every account, enormous, the kind of scale that swallows most of what happens on stage into one big blur of lights and noise. But somewhere in the middle of all that scale and spectacle, something smaller was happening. A difference in how two specific members occupy a stage. Not better or worse, just fundamentally different languages of performance. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Watch Jimin during any solo break in the setlist, like Like Crazy, Set Me Free, even a few seconds of choreography in a group number, and you'll notice his body almost never stops speaking. Every transition between poses is filled in. He doesn't move from position A to position B, he travels the whole distance between them, and he lets you watch the traveling. His hands finish sentences his feet started. Even his breathing looks choreographed, like the inhale before a run is part of the performance, and not just something his body needs to do. Now watch Suga rap a verse. His feet plant, his shoulders barely shift. The intensity comes from his face, his voice, and this is the part people underrate, from what he doesn't do with his body while everything else on stage is moving around him. Dancers might be flooding the space behind him, lights sweeping across the crowd, and Suga would just stand there, letting all of that motion happen at the edges while he stays completely still at the center. Two completely different relationships with stillness and motion. One treats the stage as something to be filled, inch by inch. The other treats it as something to be anchored, one fixed point holding everything else in place. Think about it in terms of how a painter uses a canvas versus how a sculptor uses a block of stone. A painter fills the entire surface. Every corner matters. Every inch has color in it. Nothing is left blank on purpose. That's closer to how Jimin treats a stage. A sculptor, on the other hand, works by removing material, by deciding what isn't there, letting negative space define the shape as much as the stone itself does. That's closer to how Suga treats a stage. Neither approach is more skilled than the other. They're just built on opposite assumptions about what a performance space is for. Here's the detail that got us thinking about this in the first place. In one Paris clip, Jimin holds a single extended arm position for almost 4 full seconds during a musical pause. No flourish, no extra movement, just held tension in the line of his arm and the tilt of his head. It's the kind of thing you'd expect from contemporary dance, where a held line is treated as its own complete statement, not a transition between the real moves. You could screenshot that single second and it would already look finished, like a photograph someone composed on purpose, rather than a frame grabbed mid-motion. Suga's equivalent moment happens seconds later. He doesn't hold a pose at all. He holds a silence, a full beat where he says nothing, doesn't gesture, just lets the previous line land before the next one drops. It's structural, almost architectural, like a composer leaving a rest in the score, instead of filling every measure with notes. If you took away the sound entirely and just watched his body language during that pause, you'd swear nothing was happening. And that's exactly the point. The nothing is the performance. That's when it clicked for us. These aren't just dancer versus rapper differences. They're two different artistic instincts entirely, and they've probably been there since long before either of them ever stepped on a stage this big. Clips from both nights spread fast. An army on Twitter and TikTok started doing exactly what we're doing now, pulling up side-by-side comparisons of Jimin's held arm moment against Suga's held silence moment, captioning them things like, "These two process a stage completely differently," and "Jimin performs space, Suga performs time." That second phrase, performing space versus performing time, is honestly the best shorthand we've seen for this divide, and we want to give real credit to whichever fan account coined it, even though we can't pin down the original poster with certainty. It's become the shorthand a lot of fans use for exactly the divide we're describing here, and once you hear it, it's hard to unhear it every time you watch either of them perform. Some fans pushed back a little, saying it's reading too much into normal stage habits, and that's a fair point. We're not saying either of them sat down and planned this out as some grand artistic statement, but habits built over a decade of performing aren't random either. At some point, a habit becomes a signature, and a signature is worth paying attention to. Here's the detail that barely gets mentioned: eye contact timing. Jimin's eye contact with the crowd tends to arrive during movement. He'll find someone in the audience mid-turn, mid-step, without breaking the choreography's flow. The connection happens inside the movement, almost like his eyes are just one more moving part of a body that's already in constant conversation with the space around him. Suga's eye contact almost always arrives after he stops. He finishes a line, there's a half-second gap, and then the eyes come up. The connection happens inside the pause, like he's waiting for the silence to settle before he lets anyone into it. It sounds like a tiny thing, but it's consistent enough across years of stage footage that it starts to look less like a habit and more like a genuine difference in how each of them experiences being watched. One invites you in while he's moving, the other invites you in only once he's stopped. There's a second small detail too: how each of them handles the space right at the edge of the stage, closest to the barricade. Jimin tends to keep advancing towards it, closing distance, almost like the edge of the stage is a boundary he's trying to erase. Suga tends to hold his position a step or two back, letting the crowd's energy come to him instead of chasing it. It's the same instinct showing up in a completely different piece of stage design.
This isn't new either. Go back to BTS's earlier stage interviews and behind-the-scenes footage, and you'll hear Jimin talk repeatedly over different interviews across the years about wanting his body to fill in the space of a song, wanting movement that doesn't leave gaps, wanting every second of a track to have something happening inside it physically. Suga, meanwhile, has talked in multiple interviews about writing and performing with restraint, about a verse being stronger for what's left out of it, not what's stuffed into it. He's described his own approach to music making as something closer to arranging silence around sound than filling every bar. That's not just a lyric writing philosophy either. You can watch it play out live, bar by bar, every time he's on stage. Put those two philosophies on the same stage 7 years and a full military service later, and you get exactly what Paris audiences saw. One member performing like the space itself is his instrument, and one member performing like the pause itself is his instrument. Neither one has changed all that much, honestly. If anything, 7 years of separate growth just made both instincts sharper and more deliberate. Here's the part that actually matters to us, beyond the technical breakdown. What makes this comparison land isn't just one moves a lot and one doesn't. It's that both approaches ask the audience to do something different. Jimin's style pulls your eyes across the whole stage. You're constantly tracking him, scanning, following the line his body draws through the air. Suga's style pulls your attention inward, toward a single point, and asks you to sit in stillness with him, to slow your own attention down to match his. Two brothers, two totally different tools, and somehow on the same set list, on the same nights, both of them make 80,000 people feel exactly what they want them to. That's not something you can fake with staging or lighting. Choreographers can build a routine, lighting designers can time a spotlight, but they can't manufacture the specific quality of stillness Suga brings to a stage, or the specific quality of motion Jimin brings to one. That's just who they are, underneath all the production. And here's where it gets a little more personal than we expected when we started putting this comparison together. What makes this moment matter isn't really the choreography or the vocal delivery on their own. It's how differently each of them has always carried a stage, and how rarely we stop to actually name that difference instead of just saying they're both amazing and moving on to the next clip. Fans who followed them since debut already sense this instinctively. Jimin has always been the member who treats the stage like it needs to be physically filled, corner to corner, breath to breath. Go back through years of performance footage, and that instinct barely changes. If anything, it gets more refined, more controlled, but the underlying impulse to fill the space is always there. Suga has always been the member who trusts a single still moment to do more work than 10 seconds of movement ever could. That trust has only grown more confident over time, too. A newer performer might feel like they need to fill every second with something. Suga clearly doesn't feel that pressure anymore, if he ever did. Neither instinct came from nowhere. You can trace Jimin's fullness back to years of dance training before debut, where every gap in movement is treated as something to be corrected. And you can trace Suga's restraint back to years of building beats where the silence between sounds is treated as compositional information, not empty space to be filled with more sound. When you know that, watching them share a stage stops being just entertainment. It starts looking like two lifelong artistic philosophies quietly coexisting in the same 3-hour show, neither one asking the other to change. That's what we mean when we say this comparison isn't really about dance versus rap. It's about two different ways of being present, two different answers to the same question every performer eventually has to answer for themselves. What do you do with the space you've been given, and what do you do with the time? And honestly, that's part of why this specific pairing works so well within BTS as a group. If every member filled space the way Jimin does, a full set would start to feel exhausting. Too much motion, nowhere for the eye to rest. If every member held stillness the way Suga does, the show would lose momentum, feel static, never quite lift off. It's the contrast between the two of them, repeated in different combinations across every member, that gives a 3-hour concert its shape. You need the fillers and you need the anchors. Paris just happened to put a spotlight on one particularly clear example of that balance. But there was one more moment from the Paris nights that pulled this whole comparison into focus for us, and it's easy to miss if you're not looking for it. Late into the set, during one of the more stripped-down segments, Jimin and Suga end up standing close to each other for a few seconds, no choreography demanding it, just proximity. And in that handful of seconds, you can actually watch the two styles meet. Jimin's body stays gently active, small weight shifts, restless in the best way, like even standing still, he's still slightly in motion. Suga stays completely grounded, arms loose, watching the crowd instead of performing to it, entirely comfortable in the stillness. Neither one changes to match the other. They just exist side by side, two different rhythms occupying the same square meter of stage, and somehow it doesn't clash at all. If anything, it's the moment that makes the whole contrast make sense, not as a competition between styles, but as two instruments in the same song, each one doing exactly what it's built to do without needing to borrow from the other. That's the payoff of this whole comparison, honestly. It was never about picking a better way to command a stage. It's about how naturally different Jimin and Suga are, and how that difference is exactly what makes watching them perform together after 7 years away from the city feel like something that took a lifetime to become effortless. You don't build that kind of contrast on purpose. It just happens when two people spend over a decade figuring out, separately, what kind of performer they actually are and what kind of mind they actually have. So here's the honest question we keep coming back to. Do you think fans are reading too much into a few seconds of stage footage? Or is there really something to this idea that Jimin performs space while Suga performs time? Because the more clips we go back through, the harder it gets to call this a coincidence. If you've noticed other moments, maybe from a different tour, a different era, a different member entirely, that fit this same kind of pattern, drop them in the comments. Half the best observations about this group have always come from ARMY, not from any outlet covering them. Half the reason this comparison exists at all is because fans noticed it first. We'll probably come back to this idea again with a different pair of members, maybe RM and Jungkook next, or Jin and V, because once you start looking at BTS through this space versus time lens, it's honestly hard to stop. Every member seems to fall somewhere on that spectrum, and figuring out exactly where is turning into one of our favorite ways to rewatch old performances. See you in the next one.